Instead, I'm going to tell you what's on my mind, which I'm going to do now. Like I said, after what's going on, and I read it every day, and I send it to you. Yesterday, I really got sick when they said that they went to The Hague to accuse, officially accuse the Israelis as being apartheid. It just got me. Anyway, it is amazing how quickly public opinion has changed since October 7th. It wasn't that long ago. Well, there were some anti-Israeli protests at the time, and we were all very angry about the fact that there were any, but there were a few. Over 70% of Americans polled this week were very supportive of Israel. I'm sorry, back then, after the war started. 70%, more than 70% of all Americans were very supportive of Israel and knew Israel had to do what it had to do, and were behind them. But that was then. This is now. Short memories. Today, some Muslims, not all, some Muslims, probably a minority of them, all anti-Semites, and over 50% of the liberals in this country who identify as liberals, and that includes many Jews, march in the streets chanting, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." More than half of the liberals, of which many are Jews, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." And anybody with as much as an elementary school education can look at a map and see that from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, there's only one country there. No, nothing else. There's only one country, and the name of the country is Israel. Replacing Israel with a free Palestine leaves us with a clear and obvious message: kiss the Jewish homeland of Israel goodbye. There are only two ways that there can be no more Israel, by the way. Only two. One is for the Islamic terrorists to wipe it off the face of the earth. That's one option. And the other option is for Israel to volunteer to keep giving itself to them, pieces and pieces and pieces, until there is no more country left, or they leave. That's one thing. There's no more country, so they leave. The other thing is they could convert to the Palestinian form of Islam and live there after they gave Israel away. They can do that. But this is the truth, and this is the reality. There is no other truth. There is no other reality. Hamas wants Israel wiped off the face of the earth and replaced by them. That is the only thing they're going to accept. This Rashida Tlaib, who's a Democrat U.S. representative from Michigan's 12th congressional district. I know everybody probably knows who she is. She offered one of the most strange and bizarre explanations. I couldn't believe this. Let me tell you what she said. That this war that's going on, and what the on October 7th, what Hamas did, she said, it is an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate. I'm going to read that again because I read it 4 or 5 times because I couldn't believe she said this. It is an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate. That's what she says. The one thing we know is that this anti-Jew, Rashida, a member of the squad, and a woman who was born in Detroit but claims Palestinian ancestry, speaks with a forked tongue, or as we say here in New Jersey, a forked tongue. Based on everything else that she has said about Israel, this quote from her is an example of Palestinian propaganda. Or in colloquial English, and excuse what I'm going to say it anyway because I'm angry. It's a huge, warm, steamy pile of road apples. This woman is horrible. It is like a group of protesters back in the Jim Crow era marching and chanting, lynch all the N-words. And when confronted about it, respond, it was just an aspirational statement about how better to decorate the trees. Disgusting. If I sound angry, I am. No, I'm sick to my stomach over this. And to say yes, that's an understatement. I am angry, but that's an understatement. Having a person in the United States Congress, and she's not the only one, who spews such hatred against anyone boils my blood. But when my fellow Jews are the target, enough said. If our neighbors hung up a sign that said, from sea to shining sea, not one Jew should we see, who would take that as an aspirational call for all Americans to live together in peace? Who? On the contrary, the message is loud and clear. You Jews are not welcome here. Get out. The sign could just as easily have said, leave before we attack and make sure you, your family, and the rest of your fellow Jews are forever gone. You Jews do not deserve to be here. It doesn't matter to them that we Jews were among the first to come over with Columbus. And that's true, we were. They didn't come over till many, many generations later. The facts are irrelevant to any of them. They prefer catchy slogans that are highly marketed and media tested that attract the immature and the ignorant. A recent study asked protesters what river and what sea are they chanting about. In other words, what are you doing? What are you talking about? You know what? This was like 2 weeks ago. You know what? How many of them answered this? 60% didn't have any idea whatsoever what the river and sea was and what they were talking about. 60%. They're all marching down the street saying this. They probably heard that dangerously seductive chant on TikTok, because that's where it really gets going. TikTok is horrible. You know, it is owned by the Chinese, and it's horrible. The other social media also carry it, but they'll also stop some of it. And they let you complain, and they let you explain. But these kids, these people, they want to be as cool as those other ignoramuses that are out there saying this stuff, even though they don't know what they're saying. When informed that it meant the destruction of Israel, many said that was not what they believed or wanted. At first, they did not realize that they were calling for the genocide of the Jews. But why not? Nobody likes Jews anyway. Get in line. So we need to face the fact that the United States, its leaders, its professors, and its students are being completely dumbed down. In a country that has become afraid to use male/female pronouns, what else can we expect? We now live in a country that does not want to hurt the feelings of anyone, with one exception, us, the Jewish people. You can hurt our feelings, but don't hurt anybody else's. We cannot say fat, retarded, crippled, midget, oriental, and other easily understandable words that were always used that describe a situation in the best way possible. Can't use those words. I'm not a prophet. Everybody knows I'm not a prophet. But I will bet you everything that I have that this extreme political correctness will easily become one of the greatest threats to our future as a civilization. If society agrees that it no longer wants us to recognize the difference between a male and a female, but has no problem hating good and loving evil, then no problem with that. That society has no choice but to fail. So since today's society has adopted a herd mentality, why should they think that calling for the genocide of the Jews who live in Israel and the rest of the world is not normal? They think it is. These mindless dummies have been taught that Israel and Jews enjoy too much white privilege and are colonists who blatantly stole the land from the brown and the black people who were indigenous to that area. I got a question. Who remembers when one of the greatest navies of the world sailed off from Israel to capture the dark natives of, well, wait a minute. You can't remember it because it never happened. Colonism, that's not what we do. Jews themselves were the target of the colonization of others. We Jews were forced to live in ghettos as second-class citizens, third-class citizens, fourth-class citizens. We were denied trade. We couldn't own land, and we had no places of worship because they were destroyed. We were offered exile or conversion or murder. That was the option. Get out, convert, or die. Eventually, we were not even offered exile and conversion, but were rounded up into concentration camps for extermination and medical experimentation like you do with rats. To them, we were rats. Nothing more, nothing less. We were rats. Jews are now being labeled white and therefore privileged. As a result, we are defined as legitimate targets for persecution. It's okay. White people, you got to be persecuted. You've got all this privilege. What other people have been judged by, tell me, what other people anywhere in the whole world have ever been judged by such an absurd standard ever in all of history? Tell me. No one. Only the Jew. As for Jews in Israel enjoying white privilege, bull. The majority of Israelis are not even white. If Jews and Hamas stood naked next to each other, there would be no discernible difference between them. Why? Israelis and hundreds of millions of other Semitic people, which we are and they are, share the same Middle East and the same brown skin color. By the way, did the world forget that it was Israel that saved the Ethiopian Jews? These people are not even brown. They are among the blackest on the planet. Does this matter to the from the river to the sea idiots? Nah, not a bit. Chanting market-tested tropes is all that matters. These brainless idiots never let the facts, the documented history, or the obvious reality get in their way. God forbid they should think. Israel is also accused of being an apartheid state. For those who remember that Israel's white power class built a fence on the West Bank to separate itself from the poor brown Palestinian population, if that's what you think, you live in a fantasy land. That's not why they built the wall. Did that wall get built as soon as Israel captured the West Bank during a defensive war against the Arab states? No, of course not. That wall was built only after the Palestinian terrorists kept entering Israel from the West Bank, planting bombs and releasing suicide bombers, targeting civilians who were enjoying meals in restaurants and riding buses to work, school, and home. When Israel ordered the Jews to completely leave the Gaza Strip in 2005, we talked about this before. Did it build a fence around Gaza? No, it didn't. It took everybody out that was Jewish, left stuff there for the to give them a head start. But we didn't build any fence. We didn't lock them in. We didn't put them in prison. Instead, the Jews of Israel left behind a population that could have built a peaceful and prosperous country. What happened? They didn't want one. In a relatively short period of time, the Gazans used that land to lob missiles into civilian targets in Israel. Now, think about it. If our neighbors, we all live somewhere, if you have a neighbor who every day dumps their garbage onto your backyard or into your property or into your foyer, and after several failed attempts at trying to reason with them, who here would not build a fence around your property? Who? Of course you would. You want to keep them out. Israel was forced to do the same. Because of that fence that protects Israel from intifadas, Israel is now called an apartheid state. How many black doctors were there in Johannesburg during apartheid? How many black judges were there in the South African court system during apartheid? How many black members of parliament were there in South Africa during apartheid? You all know the answer. Not even one. And to show even further that the world is completely upside down, just yesterday I sent out, within 30 minutes after it was announced, that South Africa launched a case in the top UN court in The Hague accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza. You want to know why I'm sick? Unbelievable. In the meantime, Israel had an Arab, Khaled Kaboub, on the Supreme Court, the judge. Many of the doctors at its hospitals are Arab Israelis. The previous Israeli government had the head of the largest Arab party as a minister in the Israeli cabinet. I guess if a society thinks there is no difference between men and women, how can we expect that society to get anything right? Fact, the chant from the river to the sea is nothing but blatant anti-Semitism. Don't try to water it down and say anything else. They want to kill all the Jews. It's the modern rallying call for Jewish genocide. And when I hear a Jew chant it, and I have, I am sure they are also calling for the replacement of open and free speech with sick political correctness in this country. Frankly, we Jews are supposed to be much, much smarter than that. What happened? I'm going to kind of wind down now, and I'm going to read you a quote that you all know. Everybody knows this quote, every Jew at least. And it was said by Martin Niemöller, who lived from 1892 to 1984, a prominent German Lutheran pastor. At first, he was an outspoken supporter of many Nazi ideas and supported the radical left-wing political movement. After Adolf Hitler, Yimach Shemo, may his memory be erased, after he came to power in 1933, Niemöller became an outspoken critic of Hitler's interference in the Protestant Church. He spent the last 8 years of Nazi rule from 1937 to 1945 in Nazi prisons and concentration camps. Niemöller is perhaps best remembered for his post-war statement, something that should be well known to all of us. First, they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unions, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. May we never wait for others to speak out for us before we speak out for ourselves, because it is happening to us now. Once again, let's chant never again. That's a great chant too. It means nothing. It's happening again. Our Torah reading next week will prove it. It's uncanny. And I'll explain that next week. But I want to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and an Am Yisrael Chai. And I apologize if I was ranting. And I apologize for my anger, but it's my anger. I can't do anything else about it.